Morning, everyone. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. I'm Councilmember Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee. And today I'm joined by Council members Andrew Johnson, Jacob Fry, Elizabeth Glidden, and Lisa Bender. We're a quorum of the committee, and we can do our business this morning. This is a kind of a rescheduled meeting. We usually meet in the afternoon, but this is rescheduled because of a holiday during this cycle. We have 2 public hearings today and 11 total items on our agenda, 2 discussion items. The remainder items are down on the consent agenda, and I'd like to read through the consent agenda and see if anybody wants to discuss anything or pull it off and take care of those items first. First consent item is confirming a mayoral appointment of Harvey Hoffman to the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on People with Disabilities. Fourth item on the agenda, which is our second consent item, is approving the modification to the East Harriet Farmstead NRP Phase 1 Neighborhood Action Plan. The next consent item is approving a Hawthorne Neighborhood Community Priority Plan for Community Health Dialogues. The sixth item, our next consent item, is authorizing a data use agreement with the Minnesota Hospital Association for a period not to exceed 10 years and for an annual not to exceed amount of $5,000. Seventh item is authorizing an amendment to the contract with Electronic Health Record Systems and that's Next Gen Healthcare for school-based clinic work. The eighth item is authorizing a contract with Stair Step Foundation for National Diabetes Prevention Classes. That's increasing the contract by $2,343. And the last consent item, ninth on our agenda, is authorizing an amendment with a contract with Wetland Habitat Restoration, increasing their contract by $31,600 for a revised total not to exceed $65,000 for community engagement and a demonstration pilot of the North Side Greenway. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda for questions or discussion? Seeing none, then I'll move all those items forward for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Those motions carry. Then we're going to move to our public hearings. We have 2 public hearings today. One is on our marijuana decriminalization ordinance, and the second one, my intention is just to continue that public hearing because we're not fully prepared with the ordinances, but if anybody's here to speak on it, I'll open it and give them an opportunity to speak, and that has to do with our annual pollution control billing fee ordinance. But first, let's take up our marijuana decriminalization ordinance, and this is an ordinance authored by Jacob Fry, and he's going to open it up with a brief introduction and report before I open the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is going to be fairly objective, and I'm going to reserve my more subjective arguing points for later and probably following the public hearing, if that works for you. Mm-hmm. The background analysis is that presently under Minnesota state law, possession of a small amount of marijuana is charged as a petty misdemeanor, which is not a crime. The city of Minneapolis, however, charges or is able to charge possession of small amounts of marijuana as a misdemeanor, which is a crime. So the ordinance change, simply put, will eliminate the current discrepancy with result that the penalty for possession of a small of marijuana will only be a petty misdemeanor treatment as provided in state statute. So this basically brings us into using the same framework as is presently used by the state. The vast majority of instances in Minneapolis are presently charged under the state statute and not the city ordinance. However, the discretion to charge under the city ordinance, which of course is a misdemeanor, still exists. And that discretion enables, quite frankly, people's lives to get ruined. So before I branch into the more argumentative points, Mr. Chair, if you will, you can open the public hearing, but those are the basics, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions at this time. Welcome, Councilmember Cano. So I'm going to open the public hearing then. on the marijuana decriminalization ordinance. I don't know that anybody has signed up, but if you're here and you'd like to speak on that, this is your opportunity. Seeing no one stepping forward, then I'm going to close the public hearing on this and then ask my colleagues if there's any further discussion. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will happily move this amendment to our existing code. I think this is an extremely important issue, and while this first step does not have great impact in and of itself, it is the first step towards a wider decriminalization conversation, which most definitely needs to take place for many reasons. First, there is much data showing that dangers of marijuana smoke itself are limited, especially when considered in relative to other substances that are presently legal, like alcohol. Second, although marijuana use itself is not incredibly dangerous, it is quite detrimental to people's lives if they're ever caught smoking it, especially if you're a black man. The rates at which our black and white populations use marijuana are nearly the same, nearly identical. However, the rate at which black men are arrested is several times, as much as 8 times that of the white population. But apart from the discrepancy, this is a substance that, if it goes on your criminal record, can literally ruin your life. It's a black permanent mark on your record. Permanent marks should be reserved for offenses that have an injurious effect on society. And this quite simply does not rise to that level. So decriminalization, this is undoubtedly the first step towards decriminalization, and I think it's an important one.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from committee members? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to take a vote on this then. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Then we'll move on to our next item, which is an ordinance that would restructure the annual pollution control billing fee ordinance. And maybe we could just get a very brief 5-minute progress report on where we are with this, or 30 seconds. Let us know you're going to make a more extensive report.
Patrick Hanlon, I'm the Environmental Initiatives Manager for the City of Minneapolis. We're currently, the legal department is currently reviewing the pollution control fee restructure. It involves 6 different chapters, and then it also includes our licensing chapters. And so we're reviewing all those ordinances, and it's just taking a little bit more time than previously anticipated. So we're expecting to bring that before council March 21st. And that's the plan right now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions. Just in case somebody's here, though, to speak, because we noticed this as a public hearing, I will open that public hearing. And is anyone here to speak on our pollution control ordinance? Seeing no one here, then, I will close the public hearing, and I will move that we continue this item until March 21st. Continue the public hearing to March 21st. Any comments on that? No? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Abstentions? That motion carries as well. And now we're ready to move on to our discussion items. And I'm not sure if anyone's here for our first discussion item. Doesn't look like it. Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry about that. And this is our discussion of our contract with Tree Trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't recognize you. And wetland habitat restoration for tree planting services. Item 10 on the agenda for those of you who are following along. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Thank you, Chair Gordon and council members and guests. My name is Erin Streff, and I'm pleased to be here to talk about the Minneapolis Urban Forestry Program. I do have, yeah, there it is. I have a little bit of a presentation to give you a little bit of update on the program. The Urban Forestry Program started out as one of the Green Business Cost Share programs and is one of several environmental initiatives that is managed through the Health Department. Urban trees are so important to a healthy community and a healthy city. I've gathered here just a few quotes that highlight the benefits and the services of trees in our urban environment. These benefits include stormwater management, which directly impacts water quality, carbon sequestration, reduced heating and cooling costs, which affect air quality, and aesthetic values that can increase property values, increase livability in communities, and even reduce stress. However, one of the most pressing reasons that we need to promote tree planting in our city has to do with the effects of emerald ash borer. The city has about 40,000 ash trees on its boulevards, city lots, and other parkland. An additional 200,000 are on private property. This will take out nearly 1/5 of our urban canopy in the city. As you can see, the orange on these maps here in near north and in Longfellow are ash trees and will need to be removed, and this will drastically affect our neighborhood streetscapes. Along with aging trees and the natural need for replacing trees, this is a huge job. The Urban Forestry Program is not alone in tackling this issue. City Trees Program, which started in 2006, has since planted more than 10,000 trees on private property, but really the Parks Department is tasked with the bulk of the work, replacing 4,000 to 6,000 trees, all on city property or right-of-way. So starting in 2013, this Urban Forestry Program focuses on planting on private land, where there's the greatest need and potential. Additionally, we focus on commercial properties and industrial properties and multi-residential, and partner with businesses to make this work. In working with businesses to ensure successful and thriving urban canopy, this program utilizes the experienced arborists to select trees with canopy diversity in mind, so we are less vulnerable to issues like emerald ash borer in the future. The arborists and landscape professionals also survey each site and work with the property owner to select the best trees and location and make sure that it's planted correctly, utilizing best practices to prevent stem root girdling, and planted safely, making sure that utilities are marked and avoided. We also know that the greatest risk to newly planted trees is death in the first few years due to poor water management and poor watering. We utilize our partnership with the MWMO and have seasonal interns assess the trees and collect data on these tree plantings. This assessment is passed on to the businesses so they can better care for their trees, ensuring survival. This will allow us to also publish this data on the city website through the Map It Minneapolis, so citizens can see where these trees are being planted and how they are doing. Our goal is quality over quantity. So starting out with just 20 participating businesses and 40 schools in 2013, the project has seen growth in interest from businesses and nonprofits. With the increased demand, we've been able to leverage our city funding and increase our total budget and plant more trees. 2015 was the first year that we actually held a volunteer planting event with this program. On a chilly October morning, we planted 25 juniper trees at a daycare facility just near 394. We wanted to bring awareness to the need to plant trees in our urban community and to engage with the community about the benefits. The Urban Forestry Program relies on partnerships. From the beginning, Tree Trust has worked very hard surveying all of our planting sites and professionally installing the trees with their youth crews. As mentioned before, the MWMO, the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, funds interns to help do the assessing of the trees. Several Minneapolis public schools were one of the first 40 sites where we planted our trees, and recently Environmental Initiative, an NGO, has lent their financial support by providing funding. In this coming planting season, we are excited to add wetland habitat restoration to our contracts. They are a local women-owned business who bring expertise in bare root plantings and habitat management. We are looking forward to other partnerships, possibly with MnDOT and Metro Blooms in Hennepin County, to coordinate our programs and to see how we can work together. And thank you for your time today and for your continued support.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Glidden has a question or comment.
Thanks very much. I was just, as you were making your presentation, I was interested in the program you were talking about with the interns to go and check the health and viability of the planted trees. And I was curious how long that you'd had that part of your program underway, if that's sort of a new part of your initiative, and if either you are gathering learnings that, I don't know if they would be appropriate to the park board or other bodies that plant trees and then want to have some idea, how the trees are being cared for that informs us and how to better care for the trees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. Thank you, Councilman. Yes, we had just started that monitoring this summer with our interns that were here over, I think, June, July, and August. And so I had developed with the GIS department a little mobile phone app that allows us to record in the field some conditions on the trees and to assess the health that the trees are at right now. Unfortunately, in the wintertime, it's really hard to assess tree health as everything sort of looks dead. And so this summer, we're going to be adding more data and collecting that. And since it's the first summer that we've actually done it, I haven't really gone through all of the data to see how much is going to be useful. But I know that the Parks Department does have a similar sort of mapping tool. They have a much larger scale, however. And so I'll be working with the GIS department and hoping to expand that program in the future and work with the assessments.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question about the funding. We're authorizing up to $500,000, I think, with this action, but how much funds do we have in this program right now, and where do those funds come from?
For our funds come out of the Green Business Program, and this year we have $30,000 that are coming from there, and we'd like to continue that sort of funding, but we'd also like to use that funding to leverage other money, and then that total $500,000 is a grand total for 3 years, so that we don't have to keep coming in back to up our contracts amount. So right now it's a small pot, but we really want to get some matching fundings in order to work with this.
And my other question has to do with where the trees go in the city, and if we're monitoring it so that we don't have some unintended consequence where maybe the most organized and active businesses and property owners are requesting the trees and getting all the trees, and we find that there's a dearth of new trees that haven't gone into maybe some of the parts of the city that need it most. So this is kind of an equity question about the fair distribution of the trees, or maybe based on where there's a lack of trees, or how are we tracking that and being sensitive to that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair. I think that using our GIS app and sort of determining where those trees are being planted is going to help in sort of assessing where those trees are and keeping an eye on equity in the city. I'm also looking at just some other canopy cover data and land use data so that we can sort of suss out where there's the greatest need and then go after those businesses that are in those areas. And I haven't gone through all the data yet to sort of work on that. But yes, as you said, we've been mostly sort of first come, first serve in terms of planting on businesses. And I've reached out through our communications department and through lots of different business organizations to get the word out about this program. And so I'm hoping to reach a wide selection of the business community for this project.
I believe, and I might not be remembering this exactly right, but with our City Trees program, it used to be a first come, first serve basis for years, and we started to discover that all the trees were getting picked up early, going to certain parts of the city, wealthier parts. And then we opened up the program early for some neighborhoods where we thought the need was higher, and we said we're gonna spend 2 weeks offering, or I forget the amount of time, but offering trees for people who live in these areas where they really need trees and promote it more, and then opened it citywide. So maybe that's an idea to think about, especially as we look at the canopy or where the need is and where there aren't, or maybe where the removal of ash borer is going to be most extreme. I'm not quite sure how we want to measure it to make sure it's equitable, but and you probably are aware of the City Tree program and how we did try that idea too. So I just think it's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? All right, thank you so much for the presentation. I don't see
Thank
any
you.
other comments. And I will move this item forward then, authorizing agreements with Tree Trust and Wetland Habitat Restorations to provide tree planting and community outreach services for the urban forestry program for the amount not to exceed $500,000 over 3 years.
Do you want me to pull mine?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries then. That brings us to our final discussion item, which is our community solar subscription agreement. We talked about this some time ago in our committee, and when we decided that we joined the Met Council and going out for an RFP, and we were told our chances of actually getting any solar gardens out of it weren't guaranteed in any way, shape, or form. But now we have good news, and we did fare fairly well in the lottery, and so now we have an opportunity, and we're going to hear more about that today. Welcome, Mr. Milberg. Go ahead.
Committee Chair Gordon, other council committee members, I'm Brian Milberg. I'm the energy manager for the city. As Chair Gordon mentioned, we've had a somewhat long and tortuous path through an RFP that the Metropolitan Council headed up, but I'm bringing today a proposal, a letter to the committee to allow our staff to negotiate and execute some contracts that came out of this RFP process. There's 4 things I want to discuss. We're going to talk about how the program works, just a little quick reminder of how the whole community solar garden program works, how we got the competitive bids, then the financials. We have 4 individual companies that bid and that we're going to enter into contracts with, hopefully, and each one of them has a slightly different financial arrangement. And then there are some long-term financial benefits to the city that I want to review. Just to review quickly, the solar community garden program kind of relies on 3 separate entities. There's Xcel Energy, which actually provides all of our electricity. There's us as the customer. And then on the left-hand side is the solar garden operator. So the solar garden operator sends all of the electricity they produce to Xcel for free. They don't get any money from Xcel. Xcel sends all the electricity that we need. And in this example, it was 228 plus thousand kilowatt hours a year. I just picked one of our accounts. And there's no interaction between us and the garden operator in terms of the electricity itself. The interaction occurs on the financial side. We are, through these agreements, we are signing a subscription agreement. We are allowed to take up to 40% of the garden's output. So in this example at the bottom of the triangle, you'll see that we're taking 40,000 kilowatt hours, and I put a placeholder in here of 10 cents per kilowatt hour as an example. So we will actually be sending a check to the garden operator for $4,000. At the same time, Xcel sends all the electricity to us, and they bill us for all the electricity, regardless of its source. However, as part of that bill, they then give us a line item credit for the electricity that we subscribe to from the garden operator, which again was the 40,000 kilowatt hours. There is a credit that's set by the Public Utilities Commission, and right now, for our type of accounts, it's set at 11.914 cents per kilowatt hour. So in this particular example, as we go through the financials, if we had not had an agreement, we still would have used the same amount of electricity. Xcel would have billed us $18,737. However, with the credit they're now giving us, that bill was reduced to just under $14,000. We're paying the garden operator $4,000. In essence, we're saving $765 over the total electric bill as it would have been if we had not been in the garden, which is about 4%. Please feel free to ask any questions as I go through. So this program was started in late 2014. There was quite a bit of jockeying with the PUC and various agreements and counter proposals. Things really were not solidified till mid-2015 as how this program would work. Then the Metropolitan Council decided they wanted to go out with a large request to put a substantial amount of their electricity through this program. And we were invited to participate in this proposal process. Eventually, they actually signed up 31 governmental entities, cities all around the metro area, Ramsey County, Hennepin County, and metropolitan council districts. And they requested 217 million kilowatt hours. Our portion of that was 12 million. This was the previous council action we had. And that is about 11% of the city's electricity usage to run its operations. 5 companies responded to the RFP. They were all deemed responsible, and so they were acceptable. However, they only offered 170 million kilowatt hours. So we had a lottery to distribute what people had asked for. And that lottery, we finally received our results in January, and we received the right to fill 23 subscription agreements, and that totaled up to 7.5 million kilowatt hours. The reason we only have 4 suppliers is the way the program works. The garden must be either in your county or a contiguous county. And with the 5th supplier, none of their gardens were contiguous to Hennepin County, so we weren't able to participate in their offerings.
So the, you just moved the slide.
So
But
I
the
can go
12
back.
million was 11% of our usage, so now we're only getting 7.5. That must be,
So it's
over
around
7%.
7% of our total electricity. 7.5 million kilowatt hours, to give you a sense, is exactly half of what the convention center uses every year. Just kind of give you a sense of how much electricity that is.
and the convention center's got to be one of our biggest users.
The convention center is the largest single building user. The water treatment facility with its multiple facility uses more than the convention center, but as a single building, it is our largest account. So I'd just like to quickly go over the agreement terms. Here on the 4 rows are the 4 different companies. They offer differing numbers of subscriptions, which translates into varying amounts of annual electricity. And as you can see, they're offering different rates. For example, the first one is offering a rate that's the least, but they're also including every year a 2.5% escalator in their price. So regardless of what happens with retail electricity, our charge from the garden operator is going to rise at 2.5% every year. These contracts are 25-year contracts, and I'll get into a little more about what that means in terms of total amount of money. The second one has a slightly higher price initially, but you'll notice has a lower escalator. And then we have one garden that has kind of a price in the middle, and they've agreed to no escalator at all. So regardless of what happens, this is what we're going to pay flat rate for 25 years. And then one of the operators has a little more novel plan, which is the amount you're going to be charged is exactly going to be 1 cent less than the bill credit. So I want to discuss the bill credit for a moment. Every year, the bill credit is going to be recalculated by the Public Utilities Commission. Xcel Energy is going to submit all their costs for the year for their standard retail rate, which is going to include everything, all of their transmission, distribution, generation, and includes fuel charges. And they will then decide what the credit charge for the year, the credit rate is going to be for the year. So there is some risk in this type of contract, and I'll get into that in a moment. But this one firm has said, we'll take all the risk out of the equation. Regardless of what happens to the bill credit, you're going to save a penny for every kilowatt hour you purchase through us.
Can I just ask, if there was no bill credit, we would just be breaking even? It would cost just as much as we pay Xcel for the energy?
No, we would be paying extra.
Extra.
We would be paying extra without the credit. We're averaging just under 9 cents a kilowatt hour now across all of our accounts. And as you can see, these charges are slightly higher. So this is a question of how much will we save over time, and it's highly dependent on the bill credit. So as I said, the bill credit's going to change every year. Now, our general thinking has been the standard retail rate of electricity has been increasing. And the Department of Commerce did a study over the last 15 years. It's gone up over 2.5%, 2.65. I have a chart showing you one of our industrial accounts. Just over the last 8 years, it's gone up 3.7%. And starting January 1st of 2016, Excel has an interim rate adjustment that we're now paying, which was 5.5%. And they've already scheduled another 1.5% starting January of 2017. So depending on what your expectation is of the future, depends on how much money we're going to save in this program. And again, this was just one of our accounts. And you do have some outliers. You notice that big dip at the beginning of 2014 in our price. And that was because Excel finalized a rate case and had to refund a bunch of money from their interim rate increase that they had during 2010 through 2013. Same thing will happen in, we hope, in January of 2017. They'll finally settle the rate case, and we'll probably get some of that 5.5% that's currently being charged to us back. So I took kind of the middle of the road case here, and this is the Department of Commerce, assuming that for the next 25 years, electricity increases at 2.65% as a cost. And the 4 lines on the bottom are the individual gardens, and you can see how the various financial arrangements make a difference. The yellow one is the one supplier who is holding their cost constant. So obviously, as the bill credit increases, we make more and more money each year. The others are somewhat more level. The blue line is the net present value, calculating back to today's dollars, and that's what we would save under this scenario over 25 years. It's just under $2.2 million in today's dollars. We currently spend about $12 million a year on electricity. I would be remiss, however, if I did not mention that let's say that for some reason electricity rates stop increasing as they had, and let's say they only go up 1% a year for the next 25 years. While I think this is highly unlikely, I did want to bring it forward. It is possible, yes, we could actually lose money with these agreements, depending on the cost increase of this bill credit. And here you see over 25 years, the blue line is, again, the cumulative cost. You see one of them, the orange one, that was the account where it went up 2.5% each year, which is obviously much higher than the 1% assumed for the credit, and that account loses money. And overall, we lose about $500,000 if this were to happen. So I'd just like to recap. This little chart kind of shows, again, depending on the bill credit increase, we know what the increase or the bill credit is for this year, so we know we would save $28,000 this year. Under each of these scenarios, I can plan out, based on production, what we would receive in the 25th year, just so you see how things grow depending upon the interest rate that we change the bill credit. And then you see over 25 years, you see the difference. So we have the possibility of looking at our past 8 years. If that continues, we could save almost $4 million. If we have a very, very slow increase, we could lose possibly $500,000. However, I think this is highly unlikely based under past performance and based on what Excel has been submitting to the Public Utilities Commission.
So, and maybe you're going to mention this, but it also seems worth mentioning that if the cost of electricity or the increase stays incredibly low, we're also going to see an unanticipated savings in the other 90+%, and maybe we'll get more clean energy solar gardens in the future. But still, we're getting most of our electricity straight from Excel.
Yes, Chair Gordon, we decided to not participate very heavily in the program, where basically it's similar to a hedge contract in commodities. You're betting that the cost of electricity is going to go up with this type of a contract. And that's why we kept it to a small percentage of our total overall energy usage. First, for the reason of it is a hedge contract. We don't all our eggs in one basket. Secondly, perhaps gardens could come on 2 or 3 years from now that are even cheaper. We would like to participate in those. And third, if things do go poorly, we'll save so much more money on the other 93% of our electricity. It'll dwarf this possible $500,000, again, over 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this the final slide?
That's my last slide.
Thank you very much. I see there might be a few questions. Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm glad we're participating in this. I think there's a value in having public participants in strategies such as these, and Minneapolis has participated in, I think, several, you might call them pilot strategies or kind of early-in strategies, and balance that with, I think, being conservative in other areas, but trying to find those places that make sense, and I think it makes sense here. I am curious, just are there other risk factors that we should think about beyond the analysis of the bill credit? So you talked about that, but are there other things we just should be aware of with a contract like this? Anything with the viability of the participating companies or any things like that?
Councilmember Glidden, thank you for the question. Actually, the 5 entities that have proposed these contracts to us, they also had to show us their financing mechanism. And what's typically happening in the industry is the individual companies that are developing the gardens, who are physically organizing the contracts, are really not the people paying for them. They're actually being paid for by large hedge funds or investment banking firms, could be retirement type firms that are investing the money, mainly because you can take a large tax write-off for the next 4 years on these types of projects. So we know that the projects are, while they are mostly not built as of today, we feel confident they will be built. We did factor in a degradation factor, so after 25 years, it's only producing 80% of what it produces today. And it's in the owner's incentive to solve any problems, because the way the contract is worded is, yes, we would not pay them if they didn't generate the electricity to Excel. If they don't send the electricity to Excel, the garden operator doesn't get any payments. So the risk to us, let's say if one of them went bankrupt or stopped maintaining their field, if it stopped producing, we would then be being charged the regular current retail rate for electricity, which 10 years from now will most likely cost us more than it would have been if we had had this contract in place. But it's in their best interest to get paid. So we're assuming that they will keep their gardens up. And it is part of the contract. We have ways to get out of the contracts, and we can always sign with someone else in the future. So the real risk basically is the bill credit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So I have a couple questions. One is our participation in this and getting the bill credit. This will mean that these solar gardens will go towards Excel's requirement of producing clean energy.
Yes, Chair Gordon. The Renewable Portfolio Standard requires Excel to have a certain percentage of renewable energy by 2025. And they actually last year passed a carve out of that where 1.5% of their total electric production has to be solar. And so this is one way that Excel Energy is going to meet that requirement. While we cannot say that the electricity is powering our buildings specifically, because it's obviously just going into the grid, the overall amount of greenhouse gas that's generated will be less. And each year, Excel tells us for every megawatt hour of electricity, how many tons of carbon dioxide are produced. And so the more of this that gets put into their system, the smaller that number will be, which does show up every year in my greenhouse gas calculations that we bring to the council and show in the sustainability report. So that's one of the reasons, as Excel has added more renewable energy, that has lowered our carbon footprint.
And I think that's great. And I'm also interested in figuring out ways that the state could produce more clean energy and reduce it even further than Excel's requirements. And the only way it seems that we could do that participating in solar gardens is if we wanted to hold on to that credit ourselves and basically take a loss, so pay more money for the electricity. And so I know that financially that certainly wouldn't flesh out as nicely as all of this, but it's something that I want us to be thinking about. Is there a point where we would want to pay a premium for that, or maybe there's a point where we want to somehow work with the PUC to lower that and realize that that has a big benefit too.
There are actually Fresh Energy, one of the NGOs in town, is proposing such a thing with the Public Utilities Commission. They are going to file in the docket that's currently open around this to include such things as low-income participation, to perhaps have a special bill credit depending on the type of customer. Right now, the bill credit is only related to the type of account. In other words, is it an industrial account? Is it a residential account? The bill credit is different for those, but there's no other factors that change the bill credit. And there are proposals they're going to send to the PUC to have those kinds of factors included.
Oh, that excellent. Then I have, I guess, two more things to comment on. One is we have no idea where these gardens are actually going to be located yet.
Oh, no. We know which counties they're in because they had to be contiguous to Hennepin County or in Hennepin County. I don't have them listed here, but yes, we do know physically, but none of them are in Hennepin County.
None of them
They're
are
all in outlying counties.
Okay. Well, maybe someday when they're built, it would be nice to see a map and say, oh, we have an interest in these 23 different gardens that'll be in counties contiguous to Hennepin. And my last thing is, I think it's unfortunate that we weren't able to have our small and underutilized business program goals incorporated into this RFP. We had that discussion kind of last time we brought this up. But I'm very hopeful that we're moving forward with our own RFP to also get some solar garden subscriptions just with the city of Minneapolis as the proposer, and we'll certainly be able to have those provisions in there and maybe some other things as well in terms of potential for low-income participation and where it could be located. And there's even a possibility that we could have something on city-owned property. So I know that those, my office is very involved in those discussions. Do you have any idea when we might be coming forward with that?
At this time, I don't, but I do know that Greg Goki, the Director of Property Services, is planning to sit down with you and I to discuss that timeline in the near future. So
I'll look forward to that. And I think if I could speak for the whole committee, I'd say we're all very excited and eager to see that coming forward soon, but at least the chair of the committee is. All right. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't see any other questions or comments. So I think we're ready to vote on this issue. And this will also be referred to Ways and Means. And this is authorizing the execution of 23 community solar garden subscriptions with 4 suppliers for a term of 25 years. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you very much. I'll just note that upcoming at our March 21st meeting, we're going to be having our public hearing on our carryout bags and retail establishment ordinance, also our emergency shelter licensing ordinance. And as you recall, we're also going to be then resuming the continued public hearing on our annual pollution control billing fee ordinances. And with those announcements, I think our business is concluded and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Everything was unanimous, no argument.